Well, good afternoon, everyone. We have our Power Hour, and we want to thank our Government Affairs Director, Susan Gaston, for her work in organizing these. And she's brought a plethora of her friends to share with us this afternoon. And so I'm going to turn it over to Susan so she can introduce our guests.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dale. Welcome, everyone. And I know for those of you who might be not with us live today, but will be joining us later when you're able to watch us on the association's YouTube channel, welcome. And I hope that you all will be able to glean a lot of good information from our friends and colleagues down at Hampton Roads Transit. I think it's appropriate that we have our HRT guests with us today because at our previous public policy forum, we actually had Zach Trogdon from the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority. And Zach's universe is a little bit more compact up here, but there's a direct connection to Hampton Roads Transit. And both organizations have a very important connection to housing, economic development, really every aspect of our lives throughout the Hampton Roads region. So I think it will really be beneficial to the membership to hear the intersection between HRT and housing and all of the various issues that we're really working on together. So I appreciate the time that the HRT team is bringing us today. And let me just give you all an idea of who is with us this afternoon from Hampton Roads Transit. We're joined by Ray Amoruso. Ray is the Chief Planning and Development Officer for Hampton Roads Transit. So he deals with all of these different issues that are involving the backbone, route expansion, enhanced routes, essentially anything that is dealing with the actual movement of people. That's really what Ray is responsible for. And to implement a lot of the ideas and the execution of the plans that are developed through the board and through Ray and through the General Assembly and other local leaders, we have Sam Sink, and she is the Director of Transit and really is the one who actually puts the operational aspect together. New buses, new amenities, new shelters, which is something we're working on, hoping to get some placemaking grant money through our National Association of Realtors so that we can enhance some of those bus stops, maybe put in a bench where there isn't one, really try to make the ridership a little bit more comfortable. And Sam is really the chief implementer of a lot of the different plans and enhancements that we work on throughout the year. And Joe Dillard, as I look on my Zoom, Joe is he's at the very bottom of my screen, but I can tell you he is well known and rises to the top around the General Assembly. He and I walk those halls together when we are in person, usually on the same boat and rowing very hard in the same direction to get transit the attention and the funding that it needs. We've worked very hard together recently on the revenue stream. And I know that Ray and Sam and Joe all will speak to that because it is directly related to housing. But we want to always be good partners. We want to be part of their coalition, one of their stakeholders. And so we really do work well together. And, I enjoy my time with Joe. And I think when legislators see the two of us walking around, they know that there's probably going to be an ask, and they usually give us what we want. So I'm glad that my colleague Joe Dillard is with us today, and his exact title is the Organizational Advancement Officer. So while he is responsible for public policy and governmental relations, he does so many other things, and like I do, really coalesces with our local governments, which is so important in an organization like HRT. So with that, how about Ray, I turn it over to you. I know you're going to give a good overview, and Sam and Joe will interject and offer observations as well. And then we'll hopefully have a few minutes to take some questions and really talk about how we can continue our collaborative efforts together. So again, welcome all of you, and I'm going to turn it over to Ray.
Thank you, Susan, for such a kind introduction. I'm really excited to be speaking to the association membership today. Sam and I both have a presentation this afternoon. I'll be talking about the 757 Express program that I'll bring up in just a moment, which is the regional transit system program about a network of high-frequency buses. And then Sam Sink is the project manager for the bus rapid transit project on the Peninsula that's looking at bringing bus rapid transit to the city of Newport News along Jefferson Avenue and Mercury Boulevard in the city of Hampton. With that, I'll bring up my PowerPoint and then we'll transition over to Sam. Let me know if you can see the screen and if you can see that. Everybody see the title slide? Okay.
Looks good, Ray. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm here specifically to talk about our regional backbone service, the 757 Express program. I will say to everyone, the HRT service district footprint is in 6 cities on the peninsula in Newport News in the city of Hampton, and on the south side in the cities of Norfolk, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, and Portsmouth. So while we have some routes that do connect to the Williamsburg area transit system, we don't have any service directly running in James City County, the city of Williamsburg, but we do make connections at key points. With that said, the RTS program or 757 Express program is actually part and parcel of the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Program, which was documented in HRT's 10-year transit strategic plan as required in the Code of Virginia, in which every transit property in the Commonwealth of Virginia has to prepare a service plan for service needs and capital needs over a 10-year period and updated annually. The RTS, the Regional Transit System Program, is based on essentially a new classifications for standards of service that includes for the first time in our agency's history, a core regional backbone route system of 13 regional backbone routes that will provide high frequency service of 15-minute service throughout the service day. What's unique about this is that it'll provide for the first time service times that start and stop at the same times during the service day, meaning that there'll be a consistent span of service over the service day and service week with a high frequency of service. It also includes limited and express routes that on the peninsula are oriented to serve the Newport News shipyard. And on the south side brings through our MAX service connections to other major employment centers, both at the shipyard, but also on the south side. If anyone knows the funding background for HRT, essentially we have a regional authority name, but in actuality, we broker individually with 6 independent cities, 6 different service plans annually through the budgeting process. So that leads to a large source of confusion for our customers and passengers because what the city of Chesapeake, for instance, might choose to fund might be very different what the city of Norfolk or the city of Newport News chooses to fund. And oftentimes a customer is left without the ability to transit the service with an understanding that the hours may change depending what city you're in. So the money provided by the General Assembly through the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund is going to, for the first time, cut through those physical boundaries. So the fund money is actually managed by the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, just like they're managing the funding that's coming in for the $9 billion of projects that are building the new HRBT tunnel and all the other improvements, including the widening on I-64 that we saw in James City County and north of there. So they will be managing the transit money as well. It does not come to HRT directly. There are 3 primary funding sources that make up the Hampton Roads Regional Transportation Fund. I've listed them here for you. Many of you may be familiar with it, but there's a regional grantors tax, as you see here, at a rate of 6/10 of 1 cent of a dollar that per $100 of consideration of the conveyance of property. A regional transient occupancy tax at a rate of 1% for the charge of that occupancy. And this is a hotel tax basically for people who visit our region. And then $20 million that's annually allocated by the state recordation taxes Collectively, it's expected annually this will generate about $31 million a year to support the investments I'm about to talk about. And right now, the way the General Assembly set it up, that legislation's in perpetuity. So the plan, this is a map that kind of shows the 13 regional backbone routes along with our MAX and PCS or Peninsula commuter routes, the limited express routes. So everything you see here in the different colors represents 15-minute service frequencies throughout most of the service days, 7 days a week, running roughly from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. So that it takes the guesswork out of using the system. Most of these routes, we have 73 routes in the system, but these 13 routes and the MAX and PCS routes are our workhorses in terms of carrying customers because they're geared toward access to jobs, access to employment sites, and connecting key residential areas. You can see here the current system. We have only 6 routes today that have 15-minute peak period service. With the full implementation of this plan, we'll have 13 routes that have 15-minute service, not just in the peak, but all day long. And you can see how our footprint of serving the population grows from high frequency service for just under 200,000 to nearly 500,000 people. The number of jobs served are listed here by high frequency service, and walk access to a route that has high frequency service. You can see how many more square miles are covered. So why is high frequency service important? We found not just here in Hampton Roads, but throughout the country, when you only have hourly service, 60-minute headways or 30 minutes headways, you're only going to attract a certain demographic in terms of using transit as an option to the single occupant vehicle. It doesn't suit the needs of a lot of folks who might have a little bit of questioning about if I miss a route, does that mean I have to wait another hour when it's only hourly service? And the answer is yes. But with 15-minute service, basically you have four buses an hour coming by a bus stop. So if you miss a trip, there'll be another bus that comes by in 15 minutes, which tends to ease the tension of potential customers who want to use transit but are afraid to use it because they don't want to miss that trip. So this is really a game changer for HRT in terms of having this regional backbone route system. So the 757 Express program elements, that I call it, eligible expenses that can be funded through that program funds that HR TAC are going to be managing are both capital and operating. So not only will it provide the operating cost to run that service, but also pay for the cost of buying the additional buses needed to provide that 15-minute service, as well as improving our bus stops by adding more passenger amenities such as shelters, lighting, benches, waste receptacles, bus pads. We have over 2,800 bus stops in our system today, and only about 200 stops, maybe 250, are covered by some type of passenger amenity. This program will give us for the first time the ability to have capital funds to increase passenger amenities, which is really important when you think about it. Customers who use transit, oftentimes I hear people say the first impression that a customer gets is when they step on the bus and greet the bus driver and drop the fare in the fare box. But in actuality, what kind of experience is our customer experiencing when they're waiting for the bus? I see way too many of our stops with overturned shopping carts or moms with children waiting literally in a ditch because they have no place to sit. So this is another big game changer to have passenger amenities that offer a dignified waiting for our customers. This will encourage them to continue to use the system. It also includes for expansion projects and maintaining what we have. So expansion projects like new passenger transfer centers, similar to what we have in some of the cities now. Some of our major connection points where routes come together happen on street, where you might have 8 or 9 routes coming together, but it's a long linear lineup in the public right-of-way. Now we'll be able to build true passenger facilities that have ticket vending machines, customer restrooms, operator restrooms, logical arrangements of the route so you don't have to run down a long line of buses to make your connection point. And the classification of routes, as I've already mentioned, are both regional backbone and limited express routes. On top of that, the program will also be funding, finally, provide enough money to provide real-time passenger information that it would be available by your cell phone, so that when you're at the stop, you can just look up quickly to see when the bus is arriving, as well as mobile fare payment, the ability to lay your mobile phone down on the fare box, it would read it so that you can have a cashless transaction. All of that comes along with the funding as well. And most importantly, it also provides us the opportunity to tie into our sister transit properties like WADA in Williamsburg and Suffolk Transit, so that we can have a unified fare system so that a user in Williamsburg that might have a destination, perhaps at the shipyard, doesn't have to worry about a transfer or paying a second time, but at the point of transaction can do that seamlessly. So this is a quick list of routes of the 13 backbone routes in the left-hand box and where they operate. The middle box are the MAX routes that provide that service to major employers such as the Newport News Shipyard and Naval Station Norfolk. And then the Peninsula commuter routes that run and keep destination points in Hampton and Newport News to the shipyard. When completed, and it's going to take us 3 years to implement the service improvements, the RTS, or the Regional Transit System, will result in nearly 200,000 additional revenue hours of service, with over 2.4 million additional revenue miles of service over what we run today. In essence, the customer will experience better reliability, a faster commute with a 15-minute service, with new connections expanded to reach more people and provide more opportunities. To do this, we need to increase our fleet size. We have about 300 buses today in the fleet. We're going to grow that by at least 48 to 50 buses. We're also looking at a good component of our fleet converting to all electric vehicles. Part of the money is going to go to a new Southside operating division that will have the capacity to have electric charging infrastructures as we move into buying all electric vehicles and moving away from diesel buses. In the long term, since this funding is in perpetuity, it'll come in gradually. The amenities I talked about, it will be bringing at least at a minimum 623 new passenger shelters, stops that have shelters, benches, receptacles, and solar lighting, including new transfer facilities that allow for dedicated bus pull-offs and operating customer restrooms, replacing a very old facility out in Virginia Beach and enhancing that by having over 100 buses stored there instead of just the 16 buses that serve the oceanfront. There'll be new branding on the our 757 Express program. Our buses will now be branded with 757 Express so that people can easily know they're riding one of these high frequency routes. They'll be implemented in distinct groups that I've listed here, Group A, B, and C. The target dates for implementation are calendar year October 22, where we will implement a high frequency service on the Route 101 on Kecoughtan, the Route 112 on Jefferson, and the Route 114 on Mercury Boulevard, along with all those MAX and PCS routes. And then Group B and C follow in successive Octobers, which are the service enhancements on the south side. They will all be branded. They all have the ability for mobile fare payment and real-time information. Of course, that means we need more operators and mechanics. And I put this up here because that is a challenge in today's environment. We are constantly looking for new operators. Currently, the service we run today, we're short operators. And on top of that, we need to hire a total of 122 new operators, which is a challenge that we're working on right now. With an enlarged fleet, we'll need more mechanics. We'll need more people who service the buses, more cleaners. And you can see that here. That also will be part of the eligible costs on the program. Coming up, the upcoming actions is we have made our initial funding applications for year one through our memorandum of understanding with the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission. And we signed the MOU in December 2020, and in June we made our first application. Our regional routes will begin operating as 757 Express in fiscal year 22. That just started in July. We will be introducing our first new MAX route to the two new Amazon facilities that are coming in the city of Suffolk and the western branch of Chesapeake. We've already begun the work for ongoing workforce recruitment. We've renegotiated our collective bargaining agreement to hire more operators. We're offering more competitive wage rates for people who hold commercial driver's license, as well as looking for qualified mechanics to take care of the buses we're buying. And as I said, we're implementing in Group A in fiscal year 23 in October. really, that's the end of my presentation, the 757 Express, but I would be remiss, I know I'm speaking to the Williamsburg Area Association of Realtors, if I did not tell you that we work right now through the auspices of Bob Crum and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, the 3 transit agencies of this region, of the greater region, the 17 cities and counties that make up HRTPO. We work closely with the city of Suffolk and WADA to talk about things like a common fare structure, so that there's no confusion for customer use, and mobile fare payment that's recognized throughout the 3 systems. So part of this whole program is to break down those barriers and ensure that if I live in Williamsburg or James City County and I happen to have a job in the city of Norfolk, it will be invisible to me as a user of transit. I don't care if I'm on a Williamsburg bus or a HRT bus, it'll be seamless for me to use that and navigate throughout the entire system. So that is also part and parcel of this program. With that, that is the end of my presentation, but I've asked Sam Sink to present the Bus Rapid Transit project. It is a natural companion because there are connectivity issues that will be beneficial to the city and county in the Williamsburg area. So Sam, I've stopped sharing my screen. Perhaps you can do your Bus Rapid Transit presentation, and then we would be happy to answer questions.
All right, will do. Thanks, Ray. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Hopefully
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so as Ray mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Peninsula Bus Rapid Transit project. This has actually been studied for a few years now, dating back to 2016 when we first started looking at how we could connect various major activity centers and points of interest in the cities of Hampton and Newport News, be that light rail or bus rapid transit. And kind of the result of the first phase of study did tell us that we should be on Jefferson Avenue and Mercury Boulevard by and large, and that the preferred technology was bus rapid transit. And we came to those decisions because that was the best option that provided us the most travel choices, supported our growth in accordance with plans, mitigated the increase in congestion by attracting new riders to transit, did the best job of contributing to making Hampton and Newport News a desirable place to live, and making it the kind of place that attracts new residents, and because that option would most effectively compete for federal funding. Obviously, you can dream all you want, but we've got to come up with a project that we can get funded so that we can implement this and start giving people better choices when it comes to transportation. So I said bus rapid transit. Some of you might be familiar with it, especially if you spent any time in Richmond recently. That's where this photo is from. Bus rapid transit is kind of like a hybrid between the buses you see on the road today and light rail. Obviously it's got the word bus in it. It is a bus, the traditional 40-foot bus in this case, but it has a lot of elements that it shares with light rail that give you an enhanced experience as a rider. Starting with the stations, you've got stations that are a lot like rail stations. They've got off-board fare payment, level boarding platforms. Both those things help speed up the boarding process. And the buses are low floor buses. You have dedicated lanes and transit signal priority. And that really helps with giving a fast and reliable travel time to people. Crosswalk and pedestrian improvements, seamless transfers, basically a bunch of elements that make the riding experience a lot more rail-like. And one of the most exciting things, I think, at least perhaps to real estate professionals, is the potential for redevelopment that comes with these high-capacity transit projects like BRT. We can really incentivize redevelopment along these, historic arterials like Mercury and Jefferson, where you see a lot of post-war suburban-style development. Much of it has maybe transitioned from being a hub of activity to, less utilized in recent years. So this gives us those old shopping centers, those older residential areas, something to grow around, a more permanent transit infrastructure that can give people a travel choice, can can make it a lot more attractive to live there. That's one of the things that we're most excited about. And, in talking with city leadership, I think they're excited about that too. Specifically, if we look at, maybe the Southeast community in Newport News, a historically low-income community down there on South Jefferson, there's not a lot of demand from developers to, come in and build things, even though there's lots of available land to be redeveloped. But something like bus rapid transit, bringing in these stations, that permanence, that frequency, that reliability of service, it makes more people want to live there. It enables developers to perhaps, account for maybe a higher rent on their pro forma, and you can maybe start to see redevelopment in areas like that. And I mentioned that we are in a study process that is ongoing, and we do hope to wrap that up by the end of the year here. We are in what we call the NEPA process, the environmental review, where we're kind of checking all of our boxes to make sure that we're not harming historic resources, or that we're not disproportionately impacting low-income populations. Making sure that this checks all the boxes for the federal government so that we can one day apply for federal funding to help get this built. And that's actually all I had. Kind of a quickie overview. I don't know if do you want me to go to Joe now, or?
Well, maybe before, and I don't know, Joe, if you have a slide deck, and I'm not putting you on the spot, good if you do and good if you don't. But I wanted to just hop in, and this may actually be a great segue for Joe to provide some input too. I'll start with Sam's presentation on the bus rapid transit and her reference that it was back in 2016-ish that the General Assembly really approved, after a couple of years of working on it, and getting it to where it needed to be. We worked in conjunction with Newport News, with Hampton, and with HRT to try to take that over to the side of being approved in the budget. And there was a lot of good collaboration, and one of your talking points, Sam, about redevelopment was actually one of the ways that we are able to get some support from legislators, because they do realize that, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? You have to have something there as an anchor in order to drive the people to be there, and you have to have the people there in order to have the population to be able to use the service. So, we worked very closely with both city councils, the mayors, and for the realtor community, all of Mary Lawson, who is part of our big Virginia realtor lobbyist family. At the time that the BRT was approved, Mary was working for the Transit Association. And so she and I were even then working together on issues that we thought would be helpful to the overall community's quality of life. So I'm so glad that it's really getting the attention that it deserves, Sam. I think that's a large part to what you've been able to push, and the artist rendering was really cool. I don't know how you did that, but that was a really cool graphic to show the actual coming up out of the ground of some really cool redevelopment. To Ray's slides in his presentation, I think everyone on the Zoom, and maybe when you're watching it later, you all might recall within the real estate community, it was the 2020 General Assembly session that the regional recordation tax was increased 6 cents per $100 of value. And we worked very hard on that in conjunction with HRT, with the chamber, with other business groups, with the other realtor organizations, VPAR especially, and Hampton Roads Realtors as well. That started out, there were two bills, I should say. One was from Senator Lucas, who is the president pro tem of the Senate, very formidable senior member of the General Assembly and highly respected. And you never want to cross Senator Lucas because she never forgets anything. And I had dinner with her on Tuesday night. We were talking about some of this. So we're very, very good friends. And the other patron was then a new delegate Alex Askew from Virginia Beach. And we've got a great relationship with Alex. You know, he's coming up, and we work well together, and he's very inquisitive and asks us frequently, what does this mean? What does that mean? So we were obviously brought into that discussion very, very early, because anytime a sale would take place, that recordation tax or the grantor's tax would be imposed. So we wanted to make sure that we found a balance. We did not want to extremely increase the cost of housing. That's obviously something that's very important to us when we look at increasing homeownership, and even making sure that our tenants are within their comfort level of ability to pay. But on the other hand, we wanted to make sure that the quality of life and the enhanced broad backbone and the expansion of Hampton Roads Transit throughout the region was going to do something to help all of the residents, whether they lived in the city that they were working or commuting somewhere. We all love Metro. We all go to cities where there's a hugely popular and widely used transit system. We just don't have that in Hampton Roads the way that we envision it to become. We're working on it. And our partnership and collaboration with HRT through the regional grantors tax actually is helping to produce some of that. The original legislation called for a 20-cent increase. And I know that Senator Lucas and Delegate Askew never expected the 20 cents to actually be what was passed. But from the very beginning, we were brought in and asked to serve as a stakeholder and say, find us a number that you can live with, and make sure that it's something that your members have a chance to populate and have a good understanding. And we worked, I know Joe and I and his colleague Brian Smith, who's also at Hampton Roads Transit, we worked on that every day, all day long, deep into the night. Some days it would cross into other discussions. I mean, it was really an intense kind of a public policy lift, but we got there. And I think everyone's really comfortable with where we are. And I think from the realtor side, we're really proud of the outcome. And we're really glad that we have a seat at the table for the advisory committee that's been put together to help work on, you know, what is that funding actually going to be used for, and collaborating with HRT yet again to bring everything together. So I want to just put that out there that, you know, we worked really hard on that, and we will continue to work hard on that. And I couldn't have done it without Joe and Brian and us having the trust in each other's professionalism, knowing that we are all rowing in the same direction.
Thank you for those kind words, Susan. Joe, maybe you want to say something.
Yes, and I want to thank you, Susan. I don't even think we had the time to debrief about this thing because COVID happened shortly after. But without your assistance and without the realtors back, this wouldn't have been possible. I'm pretty sure you guys heard her say 20 cents was what we were going for. And the legislators knew that 20 cents wasn't going to happen. And Susan knew 20 cents wasn't going to happen. But I can assure you that HRT was heavy on 20 cents on the grantor's tax. But to find the common ground, we're grateful for it. I think without the work of the realtors, this bill certainly wouldn't have got passed. And I'm not just talking about the funding aspect. Susan mentioned the board, and part of the lobbying and legislation created through Senator Lucas's bill was to create an advisory board to have more input on what's done with this money. And as Ray's presented, we're hopeful, and I'm optimistic, and Ray often slaps my hand about this. I'm more optimistic in our future and what's going to happen in this 15-minute service and how it's going to impact the bottom line and you guys being able to sell more homes and et cetera. There are great things going on as far as legislation at the federal level of support was what Sam was talking about as far as the BRT project. And we just want to be a good community partner where transit options, our choice ridership does increase, where you guys are actually promoting our transit system in your selling of homes. So I think everything was captured here, and we're looking forward to the future. We can't wait till October 22nd, October 2022 to start that service. And I know Ray said we're going to start on the Peninsula, and the Peninsula has never in the history ever had that 15-minute service. So right. It's going to be a good thing, Susan. And we look forward, even though this is the Williamsburg Association, you know how we do, Susan, we can set up a tour when the system comes online and make sure that you guys are involved. But we want you guys to see that your tax dollars and that grantor's tax is really going to work to to implement a better system overall.
Absolutely, Joe. We would love to do that. I know, again, pre-pandemic, we would go out with you all and we'd ride the routes, and we'd see what the amenities were and were not. And we were working on so many different things. And then, as you said, the pandemic hit and things just sort of came to a brief halt. But despite that, we really are advancing some good issues together. And you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned this because it was a question that I had, and it may be on the minds of some of the viewers today. You mentioned, Joe, the federal transit funding that's part of the greater infrastructure bill that's going to be coming our way soon. What sort of impact, or have you all been able to discern what funding may come from the infrastructure package that would benefit HRT? And how is that planning to be appropriated throughout the system?
Great question, Susan. So of course, I know many of you guys are following. The Senate passed the infrastructure package. So along with my local and state lobbying, I do federal lobbying as well. And times could be no greater right now for HRT, Susan, because I think about 10 years ago, they had a process in which we had earmarks in place, and they went away with it a couple of years ago. I think about 5 or 6 years ago, they went away with that process. So it was always competitive grants, etc. But this year we brought it back. And in bringing it back, we were able to advocate and lobby on behalf of HRT for greater service and greater funding. And in doing so, we did that by, hold on. In doing so, we did that by, this thing keeps going off. In doing so, we did that by going through Congressman Bobby Scott, Congresswoman Elaine Laurier. We know that Rob Whitman represents some of Williamsburg as well, to go in for certain projects. So earlier you heard Ray talk about the electric fleet that we're going for on the South Side facility, Susan and group. That facility is going to be a $40 million facility with the capacity to hold up to 50 electric buses. In the infrastructure package, and what President Biden is advocating for is 100% of going to an electric fleet. We were successful. It's been competitive to apply for earmarks, but we were successful in Elaine Laurier putting in $5 million in earmark money to help with the electrification of the Parks Ave facility. So that's one thing that we have in queue on the House side of the infrastructure bill. Another thing is what Sam was talking about as far as the BRT. Of course, we didn't get the full funding to implement the entire BRT, but with the Peninsula Signal Prioritization Project, we did apply for $9 million, and Bobby Scott, well, we put it through Bobby Scott's office, who announced it, that he put that bill in on his side for the infrastructure package. On the Senate side, we do have language put in for the $4.5 million asked for the Peninsula Signaling Study Project. So I think, Susan, for us at the federal level, we've been doing fairly well. I think we put in 3 or 4 projects, and 2 of them were funded when the limit was at 2. But moving forward in that Senate infrastructure bill, right now, we do have the $4.5 million included for the Peninsula Signaling Study Project. And I know Sam could probably talk a little bit more about that, of signal prioritization and what that would do for the Peninsula side as well, just gearing up as a base level to get the BRT started. And then on the back end, we're very optimistic and hopeful of the Parks Ave facility being funded furthermore of that $5 million asking. We do have another grant in place for $17 million in that Parks Ave facility. So there are a lot of things at the federal level, funding wise, that we're excited about. I heard what you said, Susan. We typically get what we ask for at the federal level. It's been very exciting for us at HRT because we've been so used to have to compete for grants, and we do very well in that. But being able to lobby and get set aside some earmarks in this infrastructure package on both the House and Senate side have been great. So we're just standing by. Of course, like you said, we're still in the pandemic, so lobbying is a lot different. Picking up the phone, having to talk to Paige at Bobby Scott's office is totally different than taking Ray and Sam up to Washington, D.C. to push it. But we've been doing great things to that avenue, and we're looking for, furthermore, not just that, Susan, plus ups, which just means they're going to be more funding in 53. Well, I'm not bus facilities. So that's the typical program that we get federal funding for. There's going to be plus up money in both of those pots. So we're not only we're going to have earmarks, we're going to be competing and being able to access or tap into more federal funding as these projects come online. I didn't know you wanted to piggyback in or talk about that either, Ray.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to have Sam first talk. What does it mean to do transit signal priority? Because we did make several asks for that. It's really important for the BRT projects. Sam, maybe what do we get from that?
Yeah, so what we get is improvements at 83 intersections along Jefferson and Mercury, where we implement transit signal technology that allows the buses that'll be using that route to communicate with the transit signals. So if a bus is approaching an intersection and the light is, about to turn red, it'll actually extend that green light so the bus can make its way through the intersection and not get held up. So it's a way to kind of improve the speed and the reliability of the transit vehicle. And we look at it as kind of an intermediate step towards BRT. Obviously, as Joe said, we don't have all the money to implement the whole thing right now, but if we are successful in getting the money to implement this TSP project, we can go ahead and put that in. And while we wait to get the funding for the full BRT, in the meantime, when that Route 112 and 114, that increased frequency and span of service comes through for Group A for the RTS funding, those buses will be able to, reap the benefits of that better reliability and that better speed. So we don't have to wait to implement all of BRT to get some of the benefits.
And that's really exciting, Sam. Thank you, because it's a long linear peninsula, and someone boarding a bus at Patrick Henry with a destination down to the Southeast community, perhaps, and there are a lot of people that do that. They have a long trip today, and they're at the mercy of a signal system that gives no priority to transit. This is really a poor man's version, but it's not a poor man's version, but it is of a bus HOV lane on a highway, so to speak. It gives priority to buses at the curbside to speed up the trip with significant travel time savings end to end, which is really exciting for us. And then to Joe's point about all of the other initiatives that are going on, it's almost, I've been in this business for nearly 40 years. It's almost overwhelming how all of a sudden at the federal level, there's this huge huge interest in transit as part of the mobility choice package, I'll call it, and in terms of how we grow smarter and more sustainable in our communities, and a true look in the mirror, so to speak, and saying, yes, there will always be a place for single occupant vehicles, but we're pretty much built out in the highway capacities of our interstate systems, and that transit's finally getting a large amount of financial resources to do more than what the states and localities can afford. What that means for an agency like HRT, who's always been starved for capital and operating assistance, is finally getting on par with major metropolitan areas in terms of transit service that's competitive with the automobile in terms of travel time, such that a person might make a choice to actually use transit. Our mode split share today as a region as a whole, and what that means, mode split, is how many people use cars and how many people use transit, is a paltry 1.5% to 2%. Most major metropolitan areas, such as the greater Hampton Roads region, experiences anywhere from 10 to 20, 30% mode split share. These resources that are coming out of the federal government will allow us to be competitive and allow us to offer usable transit to everybody, and to be frequent and on time and reliable with modern equipment, modern technology, clean buses, no, not old buses, amenities at shelters that tell a person, my next bus is arriving in 5 minutes. When I'm at a transit terminal, I can look up at a display board, and just like in an airline terminal, and see what's coming and the connectivity. Anyone that goes to DC, you see that now today, or any of the major cities. So it's really a game changer for HRT. Now, what the unique challenge is in this pandemic environment is that operators are hard to come by, people who hold commercial driver's license. And that is something that we're really singularly focused on how to attract a talented workforce, both to take care of the buses and to drive the buses. In the short term, that's what we're singularly focused on, because we're going to need those operators. We're going to need those commercial driver's license holders because of all this frequent service.
Ray, can you share with them about what we're doing as far as the increases of pay to make us the top pay for in Virginia?
So, and this is really exciting. Our collective bargaining agreement, because we have a unionized workforce, was just renegotiated, and we are offering for the first time, because of both through CARES Act funding and the American Recovery Plan, we're able to offer competitive wage rates even for starting operators, such that it takes the starting wage rate, when you look at everything in, between $18 and $19 an hour, with senior operators making $25 to $26 an hour, what puts us on par with private companies that hire truckers for the first time. And we are, the Hampton Roads Transit, I believe, if you look around the Commonwealth, probably has the, if not the highest, one of the highest wage rates for starting operators. And there's attendance premiums that we're offering for operators who start, a sign-on bonus, $4,000, a lot of things that we couldn't in the past do. And our starting wage rate until recently was $14.86, which was not competitive with the private sector at all. Because, you know, we can have all the buses we want and all the fancy facilities and technologies, but if you don't have the operators to drive the buses, you're nowhere. So it's really important and often overlooked. And it's a unique issue that's being faced by every transit property around the country now. It's very difficult to get, in our challenging work environment today, to get people who want to drive a bus. And we're partnering with all of our cities and workforce partnership to get people to train them, to provide money to train them, and help them get their commercial driver's license. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that's visible to the public, but very, very important as we deliver Group A in October 22, and then the other two groups later.
You know, Ray, you had mentioned just a moment ago how it is almost overwhelming and exciting how much attention is being given to transit. And I'll just note, I think, Joe, you would absolutely stand up and agree with me on this one. You know, it was really not until a few years ago that I started to see kind of a shift in the thinking around even the Hampton Roads delegation and the General Assembly starting to think more positively about transit. And that really wasn't, you know, even so much a majority minority party issue. I mean, there were some personalities who had been in the General Assembly and are not there anymore. One very powerful personality who is not in the General Assembly anymore, who just would have really a cooling effect on any discussion around Hampton Roads Transit. And Joe and I would be in the Hampton Roads caucus meetings, which is when all of the legislators from the region meets every Thursday at 7 a.m. Yes, you heard me, 7. And we're all there. And we would be competing, maybe that's not the right word. We would have heard throughout the week at that point all of the different funding opportunities and all the different metrics and all the different discussions around what was happening in Metro. And so there was the Metro discussion and our friends in Northern Virginia getting all this airtime and, you know, kind of taking all the oxygen out of the room. And there was Hampton Roads Transit. And we struggled for a few years to really get some attention. Now I feel like it's really getting a lot of the attention that it never received before, even in the General Assembly. And I think we're really doing a good job. And Joe, I'll put this at your and Brian's feet. I think you guys are really doing a good job of messaging how important it is to economic development within the region. So we're not just talking about necessarily the ridership, which can speak to maybe one party over another. We're talking about now the actual influx of business and corporations and manufacturers and industry that will then yield a greater ridership for Hampton Roads Transit. So sometimes those discussion points, you have to sometimes bifurcate the message and articulate one stronger than the other to maybe one side of the aisle and one stronger than the other to the other side of the aisle. But it's all beginning to come together, and there seems to be a real a stronger voice now for Hampton Roads Transit and a better understanding of the importance that HRT plays in the overall health of the region and in our ability to grow and compete with neighbors in Charlotte, with Pittsburgh, with Raleigh, with Atlanta, with Nashville, with Louisville, name the city, but look around our neighboring states. We want to be able to say to prospective Virginia businesses, you need to come here because we have all the qualities of life that your employees would want, including a great transit system. So I want to echo what Ray said, that I'm sensing that phenomenon at the state level as well, that there's just more support given and more recognition given to the important role of HRT.
Susan, that's such a
100%.
yeah, that's such a great story, Susan, because at the state level, there were some folks that have been there a very long time that didn't want to talk about transit. And, we started telling the story, and Joe, you and I were shoulder to shoulder in some of those offices. Not everyone has to use transit, but while you may not use transit, you're probably counting on someone who does use transit.
Mm-hmm.
When your doctor orders an X-ray or a test to be taken and you go to Norfolk Centera or one of the hospitals like Riverside to take that test, I'm guaranteeing you that technician that's doing that scan or X-ray probably used transit to get there. I can't tell you, both chambers on both sides of the waters, how great a partnership we've developed with the chambers and businesses, because they realize transit provides access to their employees to jobs. When you're making anywhere from $12 to $15 an hour, you may not have the ability to own 2 or 3 cars or even 1 car, and their mobility needs are met by getting to work by transit. So the businesses in the community are beginning to realize, I need a workforce that can get here reliably, and it's not going to cut it if that transit service is only hourly, because then my workforce can't get here. And if they miss a trip, they're going to be late, and I'm going to have a difficult choice what to do with this employee. So really the dialogue and has changed when I've talked to businesses, even in Amazon, when we were talking with them, they want to buy transit passes for the employees. They know that they're going to be drawing their employees from downtown Norfolk and downtown Portsmouth, and they want a robust service to match the shift report times, and they're willing to buy annual transit pass programs. So the more we talk to companies, the more they realize that transit's important as part of the economic puzzle that you described, Susan, and the economic vitality of this region. And that wasn't always a dialogue just a few years back, and it's changed significantly.
Totally agree. I saw Grayson popped his camera on. I don't know, Grayson, if you had a question, or I just wanted to acknowledge I'd seen you put your camera on. I want to make sure that you were in the clear if you had something to ask our colleagues at HRT.
Thank you. No, just a comment. Just wonderful presentations and very informative, and I'm just excited.
We do good work together.
Susan, I just wanted to add that though you saw the presentations now, we have a marketing campaign that's going to be coming out. Ray's been working with Gene, our director of marketing. So he will have a full board of marketing behind the 757 Express. But William has been doing things like 757 Express Executive Corner with different business leaders. He's going to come online, and hopefully this year, we're going to have 757 State of Transit, like the state of the city. That's not just only for the business community, but for the realtors as well. Just those people that want to know the hardcore facts of what their investment is paying for and the return on that investment. So we're looking forward to launching that this year as well in a robust manner.
That's great, Joe. And that really kind of set the stage, for the effort that you and I are going to work on jointly to try to get an advocacy day, a really well-attended advocacy day for HRT specific in Richmond during the 2022 session. There is a transit day that brings in transit advocates from all across the Commonwealth, but we feel like HRT deserves its own day. So Joe and I are going to work together within our delegation, send out invitations and really try to bring in a robust number of people from both sides of the water hopefully what we've talked about, at least I was kind of kidding Zach Trogdon about it, kind of William as well. We'll get a bus on the south side to fill up, maybe 2 buses with our advocates, come over to our side of the water, stop at WADA, grab another bus full of advocates, and all go up to Richmond for the day, meet with our legislators, meet with leadership, meet with whomever then may be the Secretary of Transportation and the Department of Rail and Public Transit Director then. If some of those individuals change, which may be likely during a new administration coming in, but really make this a stomp the halls for HRT. Put a bus out on Bank Street between the Pocahontas building and the General Assembly building or the Capitol, and really just let people sort of see, yeah, look what your dollars are being used for. And give them the certainty and kind of the visual of this has been a good investment and there are more investments to be made. And we want you to know that HRT is coming a long way. So move over, Metro. So that we won't actually say that, but we'll be part of the discussion and we'll get our day in as well. So I know, Joe, you and I need to start putting the meat on the bones for that.
Susan. I will say it. I have a shirt on and everything. Move over, Metro.
I love it. Legislators identify on an advocacy day. They like to identify the group. Everyone over there in the orange shirt is with, name the organization, or everyone with the purple shirt is name that organization. We could do the HRT blue and green, move over Metro. Senator Saslaw might not like it, but Senator Lucas will love it.
I bet we can get her to wear one on the floor. I agree.
Bet she would. We might have to enhance it with some of the Senator Lucas love of bling. We both know we might have to sparkle it up a little bit. So,
definitely.
But we'd have some fun. So yeah, realtors, all of you will be invited to participate in that day if you're able. Any additional questions for our guest? And they've given some great information and some amazing visuals today, which really I think are inspiring. If you all have questions after today, and for our viewers, when you watch, if you have inquiries, email them to me. If I don't have the answers, I certainly will filter them out to Ray and to Sam and to Joe, and we'll get you those answers. But I really am jazzed about all of the work that we're doing together, and especially happy to see how well HRT has taken the ball down the field. We're going to get there, and at some point we may even have light rail going back and forth between the two sides of the water. So that'll be in the next package of how we're going to put the pieces together. I appreciate all of you for being here today.
Thank you for the invite. We really do appreciate an opportunity to speak about both programs. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a great presentation, guys, and you should take the show on the road. I'll tell William.
Tell William, and we will.
I'll tell William. So, well, you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope you morph into a great weekend beginning tomorrow. Thanks for all you do. Joe Dillard, I hope to see you live and in person soon. And just let me know what you all need from us. We look forward to continuing our teamwork together.
Thank you. See you soon.